Hello, everyone. Welcome to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney, and I'm excited today to have in the studio a good friend and a powerhouse of a thinker, and that is Mark DiMassimo. And Mark is the founder and creative director of DiGo, or DiMassimo Goldstein, a New York agency built around positive behavior change marketing. He's a writer, advertising commentator. He helps build brands that turn emotion into action and designing campaigns for customers. But the newest news, hot off the press, is that he is traveling the country talking to peer advisory groups of CEOs and senior executives about how everyday leaders become legendary brand builders, and why that is one of the most powerful and positive changes people can make. So we are going to learn a lot about him, but I have to say something personally too. Mark is a fantastic person to have in any room, okay? He is part, what I would say, like childlike, playful, mischievous actor of sorts, right? And then he is also open in that part of childlike, he's kind of open to the wonders of the world or whatever is happening. And then he's also at the same time part sage strategist who often waits in a room of a lot of leaders when I've seen him, right? Waits for just the right moment when all of his childlike strategy, sage, clever magician parts come together, and he says something that mic drop moment, and people often in the room go, and that sound is, I think, the sound of what you talk about when you say, Mark, the idea that changes everything. So I am thrilled to have Mark DiMassimo in the house today to talk about a lot of what he brings to so many companies at a much higher rate than you pay for this podcast. So get whatever nuggets of wisdom you can get from him today, because it's bound to be a fun time. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much, Christine. Wow. I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much, and find you so enlivening, so to hear you say those things about me, they just mean more coming out of your mouth. Often I would be like, I dismiss, I'd be like, oh, come on. But when something comes out of your mouth, I'm like, wow, all right. That's good.
Well,
Good
thank
to
you.
know.
We'll just give each other lots of compliments today.
Yes, we will.
But anyway, I really want to talk about this new, because let's start first with what you've done, what you guys have done for years. Let's just give the audience a little bit of background about your agency and what you've done for years, and then we'll talk about where you're kind of going now. Is that fair?
That sounds great.
Okay, so what is the bread and butter of what you guys have been doing?
I'm going to go all the way back. Because
Okay.
we've got an anniversary coming up. We'll be 30 years independent advertising agency in New York City, 30 years, Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, 2026. So I'm going to go all the way back to April of 1996. Bring yourself back there. What song should be playing in the background? Let's put a little Nirvana on, because some of us weren't letting it go, right?
Wonderwall or something there.
Wonderwall's up on the radio. We're watching the movie Fresh on our little DVDs or whatever they were back then. And I am working in an agency, Kirschbaum Bonded Partners in New York City. Very cool agency. We've got Snapple, and I'm on Citibank Advantage card. It's a classic campaign, and it's good, really good for me. And Steve Jobs, right out in California, one of the things we worked on over there was the Apple card. Okay. But Steve was out. It was Apple without Steve. And Steve himself at that moment, he thought of himself sort of as a failure. He had created, he felt ashamed that he'd been kicked out of the company he started. He started Next, and with a sort of a well-designed revenge fantasy. And it just kind of went sideways. There were certain, it was ahead of its time in various ways, and certain tactical mistakes that were made. And so he didn't feel like that was great. He was involved with Pixar, but the world wasn't really giving him credit or recognition. And you got to give him credit for not making himself the center of that story, I guess. But he really felt like he was sort of in the wilderness. And at that very moment, I opened up a magazine. I tore a picture of Steve Jobs out of it. I pasted it, taped it to the front of my computer I wrote the line, "We will exist to inspire greatness," in courier type, which was the agency's first typeface. And I pasted it right next to it. And then I wrote an email with this picture I took of it. I sent to everybody in the agency. They weren't pleased, saying I was going to start an agency to inspire greatness in legendary brand builders. So why would I pick a failure, somebody who hadn't really yet, been a success in business and might never be? Because I believed then, and I believe even more strongly now, that the number one skill that predicts enormous outsized impact, you talk about positive behavior change, impact in the world, first and foremost, the ability to drive change, positive change, ideally, and the ability to build enormous value is the skill set of building legendary brands. And Steve Jobs had that. He had me. So imagine the force of this person. They're in the wilderness, and all the way on the other coast, this creative director in an ad agency in New York is making you their poster guy. So that's where I started the agency. And my goal when I got into advertising, I was a musician. So I was a performer, right? I was a musician. I was with bands. I was acting. I went to school. We were talking about this earlier. We know some people in common. I was at SUNY Purchase. A lot of my friends went on to be professional actors, some fairly famous actors, and they'd always be like, "Mark, you're always acting. You're in these shows with us. Why don't you become an actor?" And I had zero interest because I said I wanna play roles in real life. Whatever that meant. I wanted to
I'm writing that down.
play a doctor.
Play roles.
I couldn't be like a con man, although my father worried I might be. But I wanted to play roles in real life that I thought that'd be the most fun. So I started this agency because I realized if you want to succeed as a creative person, go home to your family at night and sort of have some power to steer your own destiny, that you need to be a great marketer. So that got me to agencies and got me thinking about why people do what they do obsessively. So when I started the agency, it wasn't for the usual reasons. It wasn't because I wanted to win more awards, and I've never been to Cannes where everybody goes every year. I'm too busy working back in New York or whatever. I did it because I wanted to earn a place at the table with people who are going to build legendary brands. I wanted to earn my place right next to that person so I could keep on learning how they do it. So I also didn't get into it because I felt like it was my best skill or that I was, destined to be great at it. I got into it because it was the thing I was most curious about and that challenged me the most. The things that were easier for me, I found boring. So I was like, this is always going to be challenging the rest of my life. I'm talking long, but I will. So I'm going to go back now that you have the background to focus on what it is we do. So I got that wish first off. So I actually have several books, if I ever write them, of stories of people, some of whom like Oprah. Everybody knows Oprah's story. My biggest challenge with Oprah's story is people think she's successful because she's rich, rather that she's rich because she's successful.
No, yeah.
So, but for every Oprah on my list, and of course there's only one Oprah, there are 9 other visionaries who wore whatever hairstyle they wanted, even if it was terribly ill-advised. I could show you some pictures, and lived exactly they wanted, created exactly what they wanted, build the cultures they wanted to build, change the lives of folks all around them. And, when I think about like Doug Levine of Crunch, he was on Wall Street for a little while, talk about childlike. Then he was like, this is boring. I could do this. This is boring. He became a stand-up comedian.
Really?
And then he's out there. He met all the comedians. He's produced some of your favorite, comedy video, series and stuff since then. But anyway, so he's like, I'm not making any money. So in a basement in the West Village, he starts what was a craze then, aerobics class. It was Crunch, and he names it Crunch because he's a genius. And he makes that Crunch logo.
Yes.
And
I joined Crunch in the 90s. I'm sure I was there.
you and I were the target audience. So it was professionals come to New York City and they work 10, 12-hour days. And at the end of the day, and this is what Doug taught me. I wish I could take credit for all this brilliance, but I take credit for being there, paying attention, and then earning my place. He said, look, this is who we're talking to. They're professionals that come from all over the country. They work long hours. They want to make it in New York City. At the end of the day, they've got a choice. This is the 90s. Go home, sit on the couch, watch cable TV. We will be there. They go to a bar. Oh, maybe I'll meet somebody, blah, 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 a nightclub.
Because that's how we had to meet people, by the way.
Yep. That's how,
There
yeah.
was no online.
There weren't apps. So we pioneered the first bathroom advertising. We've been very big in bathrooms for 30 years, but we pioneered the first in-bathroom advertising for Crunch because it was there, or go to the gym. So he said, we are an entertainment choice competing with those other choices. And when they're not here, we want to be there, not telling them they're wrong, not talking about their muscles, but entertaining them so they remember, oh, it might be fun to go to Crunch. Genius. 12 years in, it was the biggest fitness brand, and it was a media company, and he sold it. He moved to Miami. He started a family. After selling it, he has big move properties down there. He's founded and exited 3 or 4 other companies since. He's produced all these comedy albums. He lives the life he wants. He operates by his rules. He mentors entrepreneurs. He builds these cultures that are fun and different. So I could just not let you ask me a question and tell you about people like this whole time.
Fascinated. So it's good. And I do want to also get into, because what's so great when you tell these stories, and I love storytelling too. So I love just sitting around the fire. I feel like we're sitting around the fire. But I also want to eventually get to, like, how can everybody do this, right? How could people listening to this go, wait, what's my brand? How do I build this a little bit more? I think there's some great wisdom that you have, that I've seen you give people in this live when they meet you. But before we get there, and we will get there, folks, if you're listening and you want to know how to take this stuff that these guys, Steve Jobs, or was it David Levine? Who was it from
Doug
Crunch?
Levine.
Doug Levine. Yeah, did. And that how, the way that Mark sees those brands. But I'm curious as to what you're doing now. And because it is very exciting and it's very linked to all of this. So explain a little bit about what you're doing now when you're going around the country, traveling and meeting different peer groups of CEOs and senior executives.
So last year, I made I got to a strategic juncture. 2 roads diverge in the wood, and I had to choose which road to travel down. And the result of the road I took is I fired or resigned $2.5 million of revenue at the agency that had become sort of, you get successful and then big clients hire you. And then some of them hire you, delegate you to middle managers who want to tell you what to do, and they want to do the right things, not inspiring things. And you've got mouths to feed, right? And so you're tempted to, to keep taking the money, but that affects culture. That affects the sense of, what are we really in business to do? Are we in business to just make money? And so I realized we needed a more focused strategy if we were going to, once again, raise our standards on who gets in and who stays in. And so the decision that we made was that the agency has, in a sense, 2 practices. One is healthcare, and I'm not talking pharma crap. We don't do that. God bless folks who do it and do it well. We don't do that. I'm talking academic medical centers. We've got a lot of experience. We're Memorial Sloan Kettering, National Jewish Health, we're Dartmouth Health, OSF, and on and on.
New York Animal Hospital.
You're right. Yes. The Animal Medical Center, the Schwartzman
Yeah.
Animal Medical Center in New York's a new client. The Center for Neuro Wellness in New Jersey, Christine Keene, who will be very happy I mentioned her name, Dr. Christine Keene of our Vistage group. What a man, where you are the center. Talk about the idea that changes everything. So healthcare is sort of one leg because we feel good about what we're doing, and we have smart clients who are caring, and we have a wonderful track record there where, they need responsible, experienced folks, but to be able to get a high level of creativity with that's our niche. there. Or but the other side of the business, which is the bigger, more anarchic, more creative center of the fastest learning, is growth, what I call growth stage companies. They're generally founder led, privately owned. We do some startups, but I'm not talking startups. I'm talking owner led businesses that have gotten as far as they can get on product market fit and sales. And they really need to build a brand in order to get to that next level. Like our friend Dan Rutenberg was with Spear,
Yeah.
by anybody's measure, a fantastic success, but reaching that outer limit where he needed the rocket booster to get to the next level. So that is the focus. So I am 2 years ago, Gare Maxwell, best-selling author of Big Little Legends, walks into our group, our Vistage group, and he plays his rock music, and it gets quiet, and he says, "Meanwhile, back in Paris, what is the number one, undisputed, indubitable factor that drives demand? Is there a secret formula?" And on and I'm listening to this guy, this Canadian former broadcaster, um, and I realized he's written the playbook I've been learning my whole life. I'm working alongside. I'm focused on who builds them and how do they build them, and what do I bring? What kind of creativity helps? Right. That's what I'm focused on. He's from the outside in studying legends. What? So it's the what makes a legend? How do things become legends? He's starting with the Mona Lisa and working his way to the Savannah Bananas. I'm starting with the Savannah bananas, and I'm like, wow, the Mona Lisa, that's interesting. So I apparently, according to him, I did the thing that almost no marketing person in the country did, even though he has spoken to over 1,000 Vistage groups and is the number one Vistage speaker. I said, "You're fantastic. I agree with everything you said. We must get to know each other." And he says, "Really? Because most marketing people either think they know better than I do, or they feel threatened." And, I have a strong ego that, that needs tending and all of that. But the thing that has really driven my career is one, my admiration for other people's work. The best idea wins for me. And I can quickly forget whether I had the best idea if someone else has a better one. So that's really driven my career. And two, and I think it might be the frugal entrepreneur in me, I have a weakness for the low prestige brilliance. Like, McKinsey was our client. McKinsey hired us 7 times. 7 times. They're so strict with their non-competes. But you know what? Sorry. Don't hire us again. We've moved on to other people. But McKinsey hired us 7 times. And so McKinsey's full of prestige, and they're hiring us and we're competing well with them as well too. But when Goldstein and Lee Goldstein, my partner at Digo, who will not mind my mentioning his name, when we needed training, we chose eMyth Worldwide, the eMyth, because we didn't care whether it was prestigious. We didn't care about the price, although we liked that it was lower than the
Yeah.
$1 million we might have had to pay McKinsey. We admired the content. And can I tell you, Judy Wade, my friend, who first hired us, the most senior woman at McKinsey at the time, who first hired us there, she chose us over the two biggest agencies in the world at the time, even though we were in a small circle of chairs in a completely demolished office. And I said, why? I asked her why as we were sitting around in those chairs. And she said, "You think I got where I am by not being able to pick the best team? I just want the smartest team. I don't care about anything else." So I learned that, I guess, from her, as I've learned a lot of things from her.
That's cool. And when you're going around now, are you working with Gare? Are you doing some of the stuff of the how behind how to build legendary brands, like how people can do that? Is that the take on it that you do, or just to inspire them to make a change?
So I think it was about 2-3 years ago that Judy and Judy's out in San Francisco, but she and I were having a lunch, and we only see each other every few years off of Zoom. But we were having lunch in New York, and she's like, "You know what? Take it for what it's worth, Mark. But what you have always been about, what you guys have always been about, and what you particularly have always been about, is the idea that changes everything." That's what you bring. So that turned my head. It hit me at the right time. Positive behavior change, I always felt like that's our mantra. Like that expresses our values. I caution clients all the time, don't make your mantra your advertising campaign or your tagline. But you're busy working on clients. It's the cobbler's shoes. So I put it out there in the world, and some people were super attracted to it. Other people found it super vague. What do you mean? I said, I want to work on good habits. That's what I mean. Oh, why don't you say that? Well, because I'm busy figuring out what you should say. That's why. So but with this focus, I wanted to put positive behavior change in its rightful place as that mantra, that pillar of values, and focus in which positive behavior change are you actually helping people achieve primarily. And this is actually building legendary brands, and for whom we talked about it. So yeah, the how and who are these people? And the truth is, these are people who start with no special advantages, none. It's actually hard if they start with too much money the first time. The first time.
That's funny.
No special advantages. They realize they have no special advantages, and therefore they seek ways of being differenter. If you were to start, just as a mental exercise, if you were to you know what? I want to go back to one thing, because you said this earlier, and I think, I wish I'd said this earlier, but for those who are still with us, I'll say this now. You don't want to compete blending in this world. You didn't want to do it 30 years ago when I started this agency. This is a world that is disgorging itself of employees, that is creating freelancers at an epical rate. I mean, faster than ever, where there are thousands of people competing for each project, much less job. You don't want to go out there blending in. So the things that maybe you don't want to create the next liquid death. I think it would be really fun if you did. But maybe you don't want to create the next liquid death. We'll talk about that. You still need to, and I'm not saying become a brand, be a person. Okay. I think there is a difference. Be a person, but you need a brand. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
There needs to be something authentic in you that leads to a different way that you show up so you stand out. So I spoke for an hour and a half, and I think you're suspect now that that's not hard for me, to a college class yesterday. And after the class, some students stayed over on the Zoom. And one young man said, I'm applying for jobs now, and there are like 1,200 other applicants. And I feel like I know my strengths. And when I'm in the room and in the conversation, I'm really good. But how do I get in the room? So I said, first off, you're way ahead of most people because you know your strengths. You know where you play well. Okay, so that's a strategic asset that we're going to put on the table. We're not going to forget that. So how do you leverage it? The idea I would give you that I think will change everything is you don't do applications, you do a campaign. You
Cool.
do a campaign. You're a marketing student. You do a campaign for yourself. If you're better in the room, what's the closest? Send a video. What if 6 out of 10 people don't like it, feel you broke the rules? You don't want to work for those people. In fact, next job out, when you're out in the marketplace with the great story about how your video got you a job, they'll want to be next in line, some of those people. There are people who don't want to be first in line for anything. They want to follow, right? So,
Sure.
and all you need, how many jobs do you need?
Right.
So the things we're teaching now, this is a kind of power, a kind of equity you can build. Benjamin Franklin said, empty your purse into your head and you'll never go hungry, right? You'll never be broke. What do you need in your head? In this world, you need the ability to have a brand, to express yourself as a brand, to be differenter in the world, to capture attention in a world where we talk about rare earths, right? And we're trying to take over continents, and we're fighting a global economic and Cold War over rare earths because we need them. And they're the rarest things on earth. No, attention is the rarest thing on earth. It's the
Yes.
rarest thing. We're all competing on these
Yeah.
global platforms with billions and billions of other people. So if you were to start a water brand right now and you really believe in healthy, clean water, would you put it in a plastic bottle or in a screw top bottle of any kind and talk about how healthy it is and show healthy people drinking it. I would say don't do it. If you have money, you'll lose it. If you take investment, you'll lose it. Why not instead put it in a can that looks like your dream of a badass beer or malt liquor? Why don't you never show people sipping it, but they're always guzzling it messily, maybe sitting behind a Marshall stack and a bunch of too many drums, on a stage with
At a rock
at a
concert where I
rock
saw my kids
concert with a
drinking it, and I was like, "What are you drinking?"
sea of people in black and some ill-advised tattoos. You know, run a commercial with Breaking the Law as your song. Maybe if you did that, you could approach $1 billion. And what's in the can? People think, well, I'm different. I fundamentally bring a different product, right? And my service is different. I have a unique selling proposition. You can learn a lot from water because it's really the same stuff in there, right? It's all, yeah. I mean, I'm not I believe in the character ethic. I'm up there with Stephen Covey. I don't believe that personality is everything. But if you don't stand out in a way that resonates with your character, people will never notice you. They'll never engage with you, right? So attention is the gate. You've got to get people through that gate. Then your show better be good, But differenter beats better out there. So this is what you can learn. So I'm out there. I was with Gare and a multi-Grammy and CMA award-winning country music director, 3 men in an Airbnb for a week. We should have videotaped it for reality TV. It was fun. All of us, Christine, when I tell you that I am the least verbose of the 3 of us, I wish I was exaggerating.
It's so
This
funny.
is the most verbal bunch ever. But the stories, the director, he knows Taylor Swift. He worked with her when she was 19. Stories of Dolly Parton, but we're all there together. Air is coaching me generously and really intelligently. Well, he coaches me so well that I'm like 4.9 on my first presentation. And he's like, okay, now don't use the notes. Don't look at your phone. Don't use the notes. I'm like, what? It's 3 hours. He doesn't, so he's like, look, it's a crutch. You got it. You got it. Yeah. So I do my next one. The first half is like the bumpy, like white knuckle flight. Like the tech's not working. I don't know what slide I'm on. People are like, does this guy know what he's doing? But at the end of it, the guy who knew better than anybody, who was also a marketer and all of that, he's sitting in the middle of the room next to me and weeping.
Wow.
He said, this is exactly what I need today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's great.
So
That's
the
great. Good
strengths
for you.
overcame the weaknesses, and there were significant weaknesses.
I love it. Well, you did it. I love it. I can't wait to see this journey unfold before our eyes. A couple of questions, because you brought up that you were a musician, you did some acting. How did that, music background, you think, create who you were? Do you ever draw on that? I mean, I've seen you play piano pretty intensely, but like how do you think that works in your life today, even professionally?
I'm so tempted to pull out my Tommy Hilfiger branded guitar, which I really have. My wife was marketing director at Tommy Hilfiger back in the day, and they
Wow.
sponsored a Rolling Stone concert, and I got an SG guitar, and SGs are my favorite. We had the Gibson guitar account, by the way, in the first few years of the agency, and show you the licks that I've been working on. I think the thing about me is that I'm fundamentally an improviser. And I like to be challenged by sort of maximum difficulty on my feet, thinking quick, and yes, also stepping back and waiting for my moment and all of that. I like that. I'm better at that. I'm bad at, and I've gotten better, but I'm fundamentally pretty bad at filling out a form. I don't like doing things linearly. I love washing dishes. Ironically, though, I like doing laundry and washing dishes and that kind of stuff. So I'm useful around the house. But like those things that require like attention to just doing it right. Oh, I hate that stuff, but I love being on my feet. So being with actors, writing it while we're shooting it. If it was 1969, I'd be a yippie. I'd be creating but I'd be in the back because I wouldn't want to be arrested, and I'm not that confrontational. I'm a people pleaser. But I would be back there saying, "Say this. Hey, why don't you do this?" That would be me. So, you learn that you learn in a band that one guitarist that turns up their amplifier too loud and steps on everybody else is all it takes to ruin the vibe. That's one thing you learn. So I learned that back when we all used to be in conference rooms, and especially now that we're all on Zooms, one person who doesn't tune in to other people, who doesn't create space for others to be heard, who lacks that self-control or emotional intelligence or generosity or whatever it is all it takes to ruin the vibe, to make it impossible to create the experience you want to create.
I love
So
that.
it's just one. That's just one.
That's just one thing, but I think that's so interesting what you learned from the arts, right? Just even what you said. And I think that's a really good tip for everybody out there. Like that ability to tune in, right? To tune in, feel that vibe of that room and go, wait a minute, this is the time I need to step in. This is when I need to step out, which is what jazz musicians do, which is what, any of an ensemble that's learning or improvising together. I always find it interesting, in theater, in improv, I was always amazed that the best improvisers were the quieter ones to a large degree because they listen. And in improvisation, it's not about how funny you can be or how you can talk. The best laughs come from the person that's listening the most.
Yeah, yeah. It's pauses are so underestimated, so underestimated. I grew up with people who talked all the time, so I really got a lot of training in listening. And I think it's the reason that when I get the opportunity, I wrote this email to you last night about how much families want you to talk more and think everything that you say is brilliant, right? But it's growing up with Italians who talked a lot and sort of being a kid who, did a lot of listening growing up. It's a wonderful skill, actually, to be able to turn off the need to gain attention, by talking. So yeah, you do. I think you learn so much in the arts. I won't mention her name, but we have a woman at the Digo agency who, by the way, you have got to get to know. The only reason I don't introduce you to, because she exists at Digo, she's one of the most valuable people we have there. I don't have to spend all my time worrying about the vibe at the agency, how people are feeling, whether they're feeling seen, whether their issues are being dealt with. Her emotional intelligence and platform skills in that sense are amazing. She has like this, she design education, like RISD, but she worked in managing creative people and photographers and all of that, and in educating creative people. And I don't want you two to meet, because I think if you met her, that she would be working with you and you'd be sending her out on the road in a second. And because I'm a generous person, I don't want her to achieve what she's supposed to achieve in life. I want her to keep on working for me, doing
Maybe
what I need her
both
to
can
do.
exist, Mark. Maybe both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe both.
I agree with you. We're on the same page, but I jest.
That's
I
awesome.
learned so much. It's a band, it's a band, and it's what I like jazz bands, or those sort of jam rock bands or jam funk bands where everybody does get their time in the sun, but everybody really earns their place by the way they support the other players. They really do. You got to do that.
Thank you so much for coming today. We could talk forever, and we will. We do every time we see each other. And I'm going to have you back on well, we'll hear more of your stories because they're so great. And there's so many nuggets that people can take away from today. I wrote down a ton. I wrote down blending in is not the currency of today, right? Be differenter. I love that idea about you're not applying for jobs, you're creating a campaign for them. I loved what you said about that you really like to do things that where you're the most curious about or you have the biggest challenges. And I also cracked me up, and I'm going to share this with my parents, as a former actor myself, when you said, I want to play roles in real life. So true. Because that's all I do. I feel like nowadays all I do is pretend. I'm just playing roles now in real life. It's a different kind of acting, right? So thank you so much, Mark. It's been a total pleasure this morning. I appreciate it.
Well, you're Academy Award level. And tell everybody to buy and read Big Little Legends. how everyday leaders build legendary brands.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And I know that your voice adding to it is going to make it even greater. All right. All right. Take care. Bye bye. Thanks for spending time here on Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you want to get anything more out of this, go to our YouTube channel and please subscribe to Leadership Lab TV. If you heard something today, of course, that resonated with you, do something with it. It's all about the choices that you make. It's what you say in conversations, how you show up in a moment. Share this episode with someone who's maybe starting a new job or stepping into a new level of leadership, and try one idea because it just might create some pretty powerful leadership ripple effects. Until next time, keep stepping in because the room changes when you do.